The world is in a scary place right now. I think there is no denying it. And this is why it is more important than ever before to really hone in on the concept of our circle of influence. Now, if you're not familiar with this concept, it is essentially the fact that we have two circles in life. You have your inner circle, which is your circle of influence, and then you have the external circle, which is basically everything else. And the kinds of things that fall into your circle of influence are the things that you have direct control over. So, this can be your emotions, it can be your reaction to situations, it can be physical actions that you take to achieve what it is that you want. They are things that you have direct control over. The external circle is basically everything else, things that even if you work as a collective to try to make a difference, at the end of the day, you have no direct control over. And these are big world events like wars and conflicts, and also things like the state of the economy, and even like people's reactions on social media and the way other people are and the way that they behave. So it's really important that we focus our attention on our own circle of influence because unfortunately, it can be really, really easy to get consumed by what is happening out there in our external circle and allow that to almost control our impulses and our reactions, and also paralyze us in a way as to what to do next because we are so focused on something that we have no control over. Now, I don't normally talk about kind of politics or war on any of my social platforms. I kind of feel there's a time and a place for that. And I've always kind of believed that politics, the war, things like this, they are such divisive subjects that it's just not something that I want to introduce into my social media. But I will say about the war in general is a byproduct of ego. Ego is something that wants us to be right. Ego doesn't want to listen to other people. Ego has self importance. Ego is obsessed with power and control. And if we look at all of the wars that have happened in history and even the ones that are, happening now in this moment of time, we can see that there is truth to that. There's always a power struggle. There is always somebody who thinks that they are right or correct over the other. But the real impact of war is felt by ordinary citizens who have no control over the situation whatsoever. Like if I take it back to, you know, the Second World War in the UK, like my grandfathers both fought in the war, and my grandmother, I remember she took refuge in an air raid shelter in what was the underground stations in London because they got turned into air raid shelters during the war. And I remember that my family told me that experience scarred her so much that she never used the underground ever again. Even many, many years after the war had finished, she would never ever take a tube anywhere because that whole experience of being underground during the war, being quite young herself, had a lasting impact. And that, unfortunately, is what so many people are experiencing, even today around the world, who are caught up unintentionally in these conflicts. They're going to have deep rooted scars that may not even become evident now, but may, turn up later on in life once these conflicts, I hope, finally come to a close. And it's this. And this is why I say it's more important now than ever before to really focus in on the things that we can control. One thing that I'm really focusing in on within my own circle of influence in this time is the amount of news and media that I'm consuming, because at the moment there is a lot of scaremongering on the internet and in various news platforms about the fact that we're on the brink of World War III. And there are a lot of threats that are being made by Russia and just a lot of kind of news reports about what to do if nuclear war does break out. And that kind of news, yes, you need to have an understanding of what's happening in the world. Absolutely. I'm not saying to become ignorant, but if you are constantly consuming that kind of news, I really do believe it's going to start eating away at you, and you're going to develop this kind of fear mindset, which is going to start to limit you in what you do and the kind of prospects that you think you have in the future. And this is something that is so, so important to remember. So I choose to limit what I consume. I look at the news maybe once, maybe twice a day maximum, usually in the morning and evening, and that's it. I don't watch news reports. I just don't do any of that. I prefer to limit my intake because the news is generally sensationalism at best. It is designed to encourage you to read and to consume. And so often there is a lot of negativity because humans are drawn naturally to more negative things than positive ones. So that is something within my circle of influence. When I think about my social media, well, I can have goals. I can have dreams to grow my social platforms and to achieve some really incredible things. But a lot of those dreams fall out of my circle of influence because it depends on what the public think of my content. And it depends on whether or not people are going to subscribe and follow what I do. I cannot influence that. But what I can do is I can focus on my own consistency and on the quality of the work that I produce and on the content that I'm producing. That is within my circle of influence. I can work really hard at producing excellent content and allowing that to speak for itself more so than obsessing about numbers and statistics, all of which I cannot directly control. When it comes to everyday life, people's opinions of you, what people say when you are not in the room, the way people behave with you, you have no direct control over that. We might like to think that we can present a particular version of ourselves so that people like us. But at the end of the day, whether or not they do is out of your control. You could be the nicest person in the room, and there will always be one person that can't stand you. This is life. This is evidence alone of how you cannot control other people's reactions, but you can control how you behave. You can have integrity. You can treat people well, even if you are not receiving that back from them. You can, carry yourself with dignity. You can be respectful. These are things that are within your circle of influence. And this is why I think when we are living through these kinds of strange times where, we just have no idea what's going to happen 1 week from now, let alone 2 months, I really think we need to focus, really knuckle down and hone in on our own circle of influence. What are the things that we can control? How can we make ourselves feel better in this time? What are some steps that we can take to achieve the things that we want to do? How can I improve my life? Like, if there are things that you are doing that are not making you happy, if you understand and recognize that there is something lacking in your life, what can you do about it? These are all things within your circle of influence. And then I think everything else, we just have to let it go. It's this learning to let go of what you cannot control. Let it go, let it be. But instead, put all of your attention on the things that you can. And I really do think that that is the way that we can navigate these really, really uncertain times. I will see you in the next episode.